Hello,
Hello.
how are you?
I'm good.
You know, I'm better right now. I wasn't before you hit record.
There's something about that recording in progress that just changes your whole attitude, right?
Ooh, careful. Someone watching this might call you up and be like, "Hi, we need to have our answering machine redone for our office. Could we call you for that?"
I do voiceover.
Hey, who would have thought that this was going to turn into an ad for all the jobs that we could have?
You
Well,
never know.
so here we are, and it's the end of February or February. See, that's where I'm still at. I'm still
Yeah,
there.
I would gladly go back to February because this year has raced along, but I think it's probably accurate to say we are at the end of April.
That's it. That's it. Yeah. I didn't realize I was still in February till just now. But yeah, we're at the end of April. However
Mhm.
that happened. Um and you are going to be out of town.
I am, so that's why we're here.
Yeah.
Coming to you from the past or the future, nobody knows.
And where will you be when this airs?
I will be in Temecula, California.
Doing what?
I'm going to be at a history retreat that is put on by our friend Leah Zieber, and it is a like 4 days of I don't want to say it's luxury because it is in a facility that's sort of dormitory like, but all of our needs are taken care of. The food, all the stuff. We just have to show up, sit down, and do what we do. And it's a pretty cool retreat because it's not super structured. There's a couple of structured programming things, but there's a lot of free time. And it's funny, we with AQSG, American Quilt Study Group, the seminar often people say seminar happens once a year. We get to see our, once a year friends in person, but we never have enough time together. And I'm like, this retreat's kind of the answer to that, because there is all of this open time, and it's like little study centers or little show and tells going on like all over. It's about 50 people, and yeah, it's fun. And I
And
wish there was something on the East Coast like this because, I have to travel to California.
and when you're in some of this downtime, like often, like what are you guys doing in that downtime?
There's a lot of attendees that do come from California. So since they don't have to travel as far, they're traveling by car, so they can bring quilts and things. And there's also other people like me. I'm coming from the East Coast. I'm gonna pack some light like quilt tops to share,
Hmm.
some pretty lightweight stuff, and smaller items. And yeah, like it's just free for all sounds bad, but that's kind of what it is. It's sort of like you have a table space if you want to just sit and relax and stitch. You can. Lots of people bring hand sewing. It's kind of we get a project as part of our like goodie bag.
Hmm.
So there's kind of all of that, but also people that are actively researching or actively working on programs and stuff. They'll have research that they want to share, or they'll have, a quilt that they want to show everybody. And some of these quilts are like really awesome. We kind of get to see stuff out of people's collections that maybe they're not showing to the public
Hmm.
right now or at all. So it's kind of fun like that. And just, there's a lot of folks that go. There's sort of newer people that are newer to, quilt history and textile history. And then there's people that have, are experts that have written books and all kinds of things like that. And, they're a great resource, and they're kicked back. It's not like they're on the spot. They're
Hmm.
having a glass of wine, they're in their sneakers, and we just get to have conversations. I had wonderful conversations with Barbara Brackman last year.
Hmm.
Of course, Mary Kay Waldvogel, who has been a mentor to me. I got to spend some time with her talking about research and just hanging out, having a meal together. It's really cool. So, yeah.
So, and everybody last year when Stephanie went to this event, she did not gather a lot of evidence.
Because I'm a
So,
terrible picture taker. So this year, I have promised to come back with better pictures.
yeah, you heard it here first. She promised, so we can
Yeah.
hold her accountable if there isn't more evidence, because otherwise you could just tell us that you went there and you really just went somewhere else.
Now, I do
Or
believe that I had like location pictures. I think I did show like, look, I'm in, Southern California wine country,
yeah,
which I
so
did
big
not know was
deal.
a thing.
So what? You showed a palm tree or something?
It was orchards, I guess, grape vineyards. Like you could see,
Vineyards?
it was
I
agricultural area of.
I vaguely remember. You can at least get pictures with like some friends.
Oh yes, for sure, and that's something that we did it with our recent trip. We did a bad job of that on our recent trip that we didn't get pictures with friends. So that'll
And it's
be
all
something
and
to
it's
like,
your fault.
yeah, of course, it's always my fault. All
Well,
right, let's get to talking about some quilts.
well, before we do that, I mean, we have to talk about announcements. I'm sorry. It's just, it's just the way that it is. So, I'm reluctantly showing you the May calendar. It's reluctant just because not that I'm not like thrilled that the weather is better than it was freezing this winter, but I'm reluctant just because like it's already May.
I
And
know it's like the
I
year
have
is
not
almost done.
it's funny. This is gonna be like the first year in my life that I'm gonna be like super duper late with my taxes. But to be honest with you, I could not care less this year about my taxes. Um, but yeah, it's more the fact that like it's May and I have not accomplished like any of the things really. I guess some of the things, but there were so many more things that I was hoping to accomplish by this point in the year. And also because there's, the second half of the year gets significantly busier the later that it gets. And I'm just like, oh my, you know?
Yeah, this is how time works, I think, and I think we have all become more cognizant of how fast time moves as we grow older. But also, I've read some interesting things about, coming out of the pandemic, why it appears like time goes by very fast. Um, it's because we're still kind of in this mode of just sort of doing the same things. I think lots of folks kind of struggled to get out of that. Like I'm in my house and I'm, I mean, I know I have. And I feel like time did not go as fast when we were traveling. I mean, it did, but it also, I felt like once the week was over, I felt like, oh my gosh, look at all this stuff I did, and it seems like a long time from, Sunday to Saturday. But when I'm at home working, Sunday to Saturday goes by like that. So it has a lot to do with your environment. So yeah, hopefully ending our ending our April with all this activity,
Were you
and
gonna
we
say
have this.
September?
You're trying to take us back to February. I'm trying to go to September. Um, but these activities, I'm hoping kind of breaking us out of our winter
Hmm.
schedule. We'll sort of make things slow down a little bit. I don't know.
Well, and as it stands right now, our May is slower than
Yeah.
April was. Although, like up here is you getting back from Temecula time. And right here is us going down to the Penn Dry Goods show. And because April was so crazy, we didn't get to do any stitch and glitch. So we've made sure that we've like stuck
Yeah.
some stitch and glitch in there. And then we kind of go back to regularly scheduled programming with our Book Talk Tuesday reading Pam's portable patchwork book. So yeah, May's gonna be a little more settled. Now that's not to say that like something doesn't blow up in the meantime, but
Or some like fantastic opportunity that we both have to just like pack up and run and go to. Who knows?
yeah. But
I always hope for excitement like that.
yeah, but that's what we're looking at now. So what we're going to do today, now that I have to find it again, is where did it go? Hello, what are you doing? Okay. Is we're going to look at a quilt exhibit that came down, I think in January, at the New England Quilt Museum called Maker Unknown. And it was funny. So this quilt that's on the front, oh my God, what is this thing called? It's intro.
The
Like,
right, the what are are those called? I don't know. I always call them like the blurb, the placard, the I don't know.
Well, they're like the introduction. I'm sure they're called something special, but off the top of my head, I don't know. But this quilt is in the exhibit. And I remember when the exhibit first went up, um, I took a picture of that quilt and sent it to you and was like,
Hmm.
oh my God.
I love
It,
this. I mean, and I have, of course, you have been teasing me about this. I keep thinking like I want to see all the
well,
things. This is
and
fantastic.
just the way the quilt is hung in this gallery, the way the light was on it, it's in, as far as I can recall, it's in like pristine condition. I've never seen it before. It's in the collection. Um, it just like blew me away. And again, I'll mention because we've mentioned this in relation to other quilt museums is, one of the I feel like one of the best things about NEQM is that you can get right up close to the quilt. There isn't like a partition like some other museums will have that keeps you at a distance. You can really get like I can literally like magnifying glass. Yeah, like this person's stitches. And I think that's so important when engaging with this particular like medium of art. You
I
know,
agree. Yeah.
it's the same as like seeing brush strokes on a canvas,
Hmm.
like,
Yeah.
so yeah. So
That
this
said,
is,
I do understand when museums are kind of like a little bit like stay away from the textiles because I think there is something, I mean, there's something that is, I mean, I don't think, I know there is something touchable. People want to touch textiles, whereas a painting has, although I've seen paintings definitely where I wanted to run my hand over the surface because they're interesting. I feel like people have a little bit harder time keeping their hands to themselves when they see a textile. So, but I more than appreciate the museums that kind of are keeping an eye on people, but so that you can get close.
I will say that in my 3 years at the museum, I've only ever seen someone break the no touch rule once. That's not to say it hasn't happened before. It's just
Right.
I only saw once. Okay, so you're my reader du jour here.
All righty.
Is this big enough?
Okay. It is. Ah, so Laura, your collections manager, I'm assuming like gathered these.
Yes, she curates
Yeah.
the exhibits that end up in this particular gallery.
Yep. And what I have learned is that Laura has an incredible eye and
Hmm.
she knows the collection really well. So, all right. The database of our museum's collection lists far too many makers as unknown. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, most women did not sign their quilts or attach labels to them. Occasionally, someone from a later generation would attach a note to a quilt with the information that has been passed down orally with the quilt, but far too often that information is incorrect. All too often, the maker information is lost to time. In this exhibit, we celebrate some quilts from our museum collection whose maker is unknown to us. We wish we knew more about the makers of these beautiful quilts. As historians, the museum staff urges quilt makers and makers of all crafts to put signatures or labels on their work. If you would like information about making labels for your quilts, please visit the volunteers in our museum library. And I would say, if you can't get to the NEQM, there are lots of resources about labeling your quilts. There's lots of places that will kind of just quickly explain to you how to label a quilt. And I feel like most quilt makers have some idea,
Hmm.
but people that collect quilts might not. So there are numerous ways to document and label quilts, and even if it's just something very small, it's better than nothing.
And off we go.
Oh, I'm already excited.
Okay, well, we'll skip this one then. This one I found the border to be so incredibly interesting. I don't
Yeah.
like I've seen this part as a border, but like in the kind of like this cornerstone kind of area, like I don't know that I've ever seen it treated that way.
Yeah, they did some interesting things here. And, at first I was like, oh, this is like a Hearts and Gizzards, but it's a variation, perhaps. Or I'm guessing there's probably totally another name for this.
I'm sure there's another name, but my first instinct would be a Heart and Gizzards too.
Mhm.
Which I already think is an odd name.
There is actually another name for it I came across recently, and now I'm blanking on it, but I'm like, Hearts and Gizzards is a weird name, and it's just right. Now, does this quilt have any signatures on it? Because it seems to me like this would be a perfect quilt for putting some signatures on, especially in those border.
I mean, I guess it potentially could.
But it
Oh,
doesn't because we don't know who made it.
they're calling it Martha's Choice. I actually have never heard that title for it. I'll have to look that up. Um, so we've got circa 1890 cotton hand piece hand quilted. History does not tell us what the unknown maker called this quilt. Oh, here we go. Yeah, versions of it made in the 19th century were called Hearts and Gizzards, but that name covered several other similar
Ah,
patterns.
okay.
When the pattern for this block was published in 1934, Nancy Cabot called it Martha's Choice. Nancy Cabot was the pen name for Loretta Leitner,
Yeah, Lightner Rising.
who was originally hired by the Chicago Tribune to produce a weekly quilt block pattern. Historian Barbara Brackman tells us that Cabot's designs included more ideas and traditional patterns that produced an attractive column undistinguished by historical accuracy. Gift of Donald Beld. Um, Yeah, it's funny. I thought similarly that this could be an interesting quilt, to be like a signature kind of a
Hmm.
thing, especially for um, some of those quilts, like fundraising quilts.
Right.
I don't know that we've ever seen this pattern used for that. Not that it doesn't exist somewhere. I just don't think we've ever seen it. And it's funny when you consider like each individual kind of space here, you could have
Hmm.
charged different money for each one of those different kinds of spaces,
Right. Yeah.
given how big it is, you know?
Hmm. Hmm. And
Uh,
I really thought that that border, and because they're
mhm,
sort of brick-like, that yeah.
mhm. And look at the quilting in the border. It
Yes,
makes
I
such
just
a slight
noticed that.
shine.
Yeah.
I just noticed that too. I did not even because there's like next to no quilting, it seems like in these blocks here, but in this border, there's this like stair step kind of if you tilt your head, it kind of looks like Mario. Like that M for Mario.
Yes.
Um, but yeah, isn't it interesting too, like the details that you see on a picture later or a video that you wouldn't likely see during. I think I also have, yeah, I've got some close up of the fabric here.
Oh, yeah, that was going to be my next question as far as because from a distance, it's hard to tell that it's got this print. And now up
Hmm.
close, I can see these are some of those ubiquitous, late 19th
Yeah,
century
we see
prints.
this green a
Hmm.
lot. I don't know that I've ever seen this red. Um,
Haha, I actually have some of that.
oh, do you really with this
I
like
think,
black? I think it's black.
yes, I think it's a re what I have is a reproduction, but yes, I've seen that reproduced.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I don't know that I've seen this particular print very much, at least yet.
Yeah, I've seen reproductions of that too. So,
Hmm.
um, or something similar. It's funny. In collecting some 1970s and 1980s reproduction prints,
Hmm.
um, they kind of ran the gamut, I think, even within the same company, like Cranston VIP Printworks.
Hmm.
Um, they kind of ran the gamut in how they reproduced some of those. And yeah, it's interesting.
I got that too. And never, and like this is all the same, at least as far as I could tell. It's all the same fabrics used throughout.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see. So the way they've done this, so typically a hearts and gizzards would be a complete triangle, then with those sort of half heart shapes, inset. This one, the triangle now has this secondary pattern because the tip of the triangle is that alternating color.
Hmm.
Um, so that's the piece that's new to me. But yeah, I like this one. This one's fun.
It's a great one to start off with, isn't it?
Oh, this is such a perfect looking quilt. And the pattern, the design is so interesting. Um, I mean,
It's
yeah.
like, I mean, even from this picture far away here, you can even see how great the quilting is on it. But and I didn't take this one second because like I couldn't resist. I go in a very like,
Mhm.
controlled kind of fashion to get through the gallery. Um, but this one just it's just like a Christmas present. It's so just like perfect and pristine and ugh, just makes me happy.
Yeah, I am truly in love with this one too. I mean, this is just a fantastic pineapple, and we've seen some interesting pineapples.
Yeah.
You know, that was a very common motif in some eras of 19th century quilts, and some of them are weird, and this one's just very cool and unique.
So this one is Pennsylvania, because of course it has to be. Appliqued pineapple quilt circa 1860, cotton hand pieced, appliqued, and quilted. Legend says that American sea captains brought home exotic fruits, among them pineapples, and impaled them on their gate and fence posts to herald their return from the sea. Whether folklore or fact, the pineapple has served as a symbol of hospitality and goodwill in Western culture for centuries. This quilt can be dated to the middle of the 19th century because of the bold red and green fabrics used as well as by the repetitive blocks that became the mainstay of quilt construction during that era. I never heard this folklore about the pineapple.
Yeah, I had heard some stories. So I grew up in, well, and I mean, you grew up in kind of historic area as well, but I grew up in a small East Coast town that had both Revolutionary War and Civil War history, so both colonial and 19th century. And the pineapple was there. That folklore was not necessarily about the sea captains, although that had to be where they got them from. It's not like they had, mail order from Polynesia to get yourself a crate of pineapples. But the pineapples would come and they were such a status symbol because it was like, this exotic thing, and you would put it on your mantle or, and it was kind of this symbol of hospitality. Like, I want you to come to my house and visit and see my pineapple. It
Hmm.
was like one of those things. So I guess it's kind of the same story, but where I grew up, it was about like the people of the town, not necessarily the sea captains. But
Hmm.
you know. Ah, gorgeous. Oh, look at
Look
that
at how
pattern. It's like an
look
orange
at just
peel,
how
kind of.
pristine it is.
It really is. This quilt looks like it has never seen the light of day. For 1860, that's what you said, right?
Yep.
1860-ish? Oh
Yep.
my goodness. Yeah. This
Yeah,
quilt could
it's
have been made yesterday.
hold on. I'm gonna turn off my camera for just a second because I really need to like cough and blow my nose, and it would be weird.
So, like red and green quilts, that's another one. I feel like our red and green quilts commonly, like, I mean, is 1860 like a common period for red and green? I have not really studied red and green quilts much, simply because I mean, they're beautiful. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they're not like fantastic, but every time I see a red and green quilt, I'm like, Christmas.
Yeah, I
You
know it's
know?
hard.
And I don't think that was not necessarily the connection back there in the 19th century. It was about those two bold colors. So
Hmm.
because turkey red becomes a thing, and I mean, I'm assuming we at this point also have some better greens. Um, I mean, is this kind of like the beginning of red and green quilts?
I don't know if it's the beginning, but I mean
Is it a high period or
I do feel like a lot that I see are around, yeah, 18. I think I've seen as early as 1840 and then
Mhm.
yeah, 1850, 60. Yeah, I think a
Yeah.
lot of them tend to date around. It's funny too because in before this exhibit went up, I forget. No, this exhibit must have gone up in January and then come down in March. So, because it wasn't up in December. And in December, we had a regional like New England Quilt Study Group like holiday gathering at the museum. And Laura lovingly pulled a bunch of quilts for us and she of course picked like a lot of red and green ones. And a lot of people brought red and green because I mean that like you said, that like
Holidays.
means Christmas. Well,
Yeah.
and I did holiday in case people had like Hanukkah quilts and things like that. But
Yeah. Yeah.
um
But
uh,
predominant colors, red and
and
green, blue and silver.
and you know what's funny is she did not pull this quill. So when I saw this and I actually should have asked her like, "Hey, did you come across this when you were deciding what to pull for our group?" And then was like, "Ooh, I'm gonna put this in that next exhibit." Because I really would have liked to play with this one a bit. because it is so pristine. And I believe if I get, okay, so like here, this this is all applique, and then this one's reverse.
Okay, that was going to be my question. Are the
Yeah.
little scales of the pineapple reverse applique?
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
they
then so
are.
then there's that, and then I know I have more than one picture of this bad boy, but and then this border is this is applique too.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
the red, which it makes up in between that red and green, is also applique. It's not pieced, which is
Interesting.
interesting because it looks pieced. Watch when you oh, hold on. Let
Oh, sure. I
me
mean, it's got like its stop and start and
Yeah.
like it's
Oh, okay, I
encased
did
in
get
the
a close up
ends
of
of
it.
the.
No, wait. Am I looking at a different one now?
Hmm.
Because this one now looks okay. The one I was just looking at totally looked, didn't it totally look applique on? Or is this one applique too? This one looks pieced.
I mean, I think the easiest way to, or well, I don't
No,
know that there's always
no.
an easy way, but you can kind of tell with applique as it sort of it pops up a little bit more than a
Well,
seamed.
that's why I was like, when I was looking at this one from, okay, wait, no, wait. See, like from far up, because obviously you can't really tell based on how I'm taking the picture, but this is up high from me.
Hmm.
Um, and that's one reason why I got a close up, because up here it looked more applique because you can see all the shadow.
Hmm.
But
That could also just be from your vantage point, I guess.
yeah, that's
But
why
what
I'm
would be
like,
interesting is to feel it. If this was something that you were allowed to touch,
well, no,
you
what
could
I'm
kind
thinking
of
is,
feel like, you can feel if there's,
what I'm
you know,
thinking is I saw this from up higher and was like, that looks like it's applique, and that's probably why I took this close up
gotcha.
because I was
Yeah.
like, oh, that looks applique, and then I get here, and then I'm like, oh wait, no, it just looks
Um,
applique.
But honestly, I have been surprised at things I have seen, both from quilt study, things I have. Um, I'm studying a particular quilt for an AQSG quilt study, and in reproducing that quilt, or a version of that quilt, I've found some things that were super interesting, and I think that people in antiquity sometimes just took different routes to accomplish what they want to accomplish, and or what they were taught to do. And so I
Mhm.
think there's the potential for things that we think would be most naturally to be pieced that are appliqued and vice versa, I guess.
Hmm. And then I thought this treatment in the corner was interesting.
Yeah, this is a really, really lovely, lovely quilt.
Hmm. Yeah, I also just like love like the simplicity of,
Hmm.
I forget what this motif is called. Do you remember what this motif is called?
Well, I mean, I think I've seen it called like, just an orange peel. It is also like I mean, outside of the quilting world, it's like a flower of life kind of. Like it's an endless kind of pattern, like the way it's constructed, it just kind of goes on forever. Um because it's essentially overlapping circles when you really look at it. And like there's lots of, or I mean, this is a very prominent sashiko pattern. So the Japanese stitching. So it's kind of one of those like global symbols. I don't know how else to say that.
This thing is also just huge.
Yeah, I was gonna say it is right up against the ceiling,
It
isn't it?
is
Like up
so,
there.
it is so tall. It's just a massive quilt.
And so these blocks then are big blocks.
They're big, yeah. Um, yeah, and I think it goes right up to the ceiling, and then I'm pretty sure it was like, let me go back here. I think it was right down to the floor. Yep, here's the floor right here.
So that was made for one of them big old beds.
Well,
Pile high.
they often tend to say the bigger the quilt, the older it tends to be.
Hmm.
So,
Yeah, we often hear that. And the reason being, if you have not heard, is because of the feather beds. Like they did not have standardized mattresses or even really bed studs for that matter. So, those feather bed mattresses piled up and they wanted to have the hang. So that's why
mhm.
quilts are so big.
Now I did get pictures of stuff. We have this, dresser that's in there that has, the plexiglass so we can show smaller things or more not in great shape things as part of exhibits and stuff. It just becomes a little difficult sometimes to take the photos because of the glare. So I did the
The
best I
plexi.
could. I couldn't necessarily get like really spectacular like close-ups, although this one's not half bad. But the fabrics and like this fabric right here,
Hmm.
mwah, like
Yeah, those prints I always think are like, if I didn't know anything about quilts and just saw that from a distance, it almost looks like those kind of, I don't know, like, I don't know what word to use, them kind of tribal-ish designs that you would see on modern things today that, they don't necessarily hearken to anything specific, but they're sort of modern looking.
I like too. I didn't even notice how she pieced this one block here because she didn't have enough.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I love stuff like that.
For
So, this is
sure.
a four-patch doll quilt, circa 1875. This one actually gives the width and height and everything. 13.5 by 18.5, cotton, hand pieced and tied. The maker used madder, double pink, and blue print fabrics characteristic of the third quarter of the 19th century to produce this small quilt. In keeping with its potential use as a play item, the quilt is tied rather than quilted. Given its simple construction, it is possible that it was made by a child. Hmm.
Makes sense. I mean, I've recently looked at a bunch of doll quilts, and the assumption is usually, well, often the simplistic ones or the ones that are a little wonky, you would probably accurately guess they were made by a child as like a first sewing lesson or something
Hmm.
like that.
Nothing like the cross-stitch samplers that we see made by children still in utero.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder what their first one looked like. This
Oh,
is really
Delectable
cute.
Mountains.
This is very cute. It's just very simple and pretty, and I thoroughly love it. They're calling this one Lost Ships.
Oh, okay. Rocky Glen is also, yeah. So this is one of those ones that it's Delectable Mountains, I think, is that layout that you see that kind of is
Hmm.
like they're all around. But yes, Rocky Glen is another name that I'm familiar with for this one.
So yeah, they're calling this one Lost Ships, maker unknown, date circa 1845, 42 inches by 52 and a half, cotton, hand piece, hand quilted. Quilt patterns are often known by different names. This pattern is known as Lost Ships, Sailboat, West Wind, and Rocky Glen. The pattern was published with the name Lost Ships by the Ladies Art Company. We've talked about that before, in
Mhm.
their catalog of quilt block patterns. One time, Steph and I were looking at magazine art ads, and that Ladies Art Company book was in one of the old ads. They began publishing their catalog in the 1880s in St. Louis. Before this time, quilt names were often regional. Lost Ships was pattern number 318 in the catalog.
Yeah, Ladies Art Company is such a fabulous resource if you can, get your hand on images of those catalogs or actually one of the catalogs. Um, I've been corresponding with a newish friend of a friend who is like the Ladies Art Company like person, and she's
Oh,
been she's been trying to track some things down, and because I've accessed the William Rush Dunton quilting collection at the BMA, she's got some questions that I'm excited to help with. Hopefully, I can find something exciting and new information for her.
that's very interesting.
Yeah.
So we have this cutie. Let me
So is this a strippy quilt or a stripy quilt? Looks
hold
like
on. There we
there's
go.
some various things going on here.
I think it's all of the above because you've got like just some like pieces here that are just kind of like make do. I think this is kind of just a lot of like
Make and
putting
do.
stuff together. Yeah, because like some of it doesn't even make sense, right? Like we had extra red right here, but we put it on this brown piece instead of on the end of this red piece,
Right?
you know? So it was just kind of like whatever, get in the but you can see what I mean about the glare. But
Yeah.
anyways, the
I wonder
fabric,
if those are perhaps offcuts or something from a different, because they look like they're appliqued. Those look like they're appliqued down.
I don't know. Let's find
Um,
out. Hold on, let
oh
me.
dear.
It becomes difficult when you get further down because the other drawers you have to hold closed while you're trying to. So Bars Dolls quilt circa 1890, 16 by 17 and a quarter, hand pieced, hand quilted. So I guess we're not applicating. Although the colors of this quilt are now tan, the original color scheme was likely red and pink. The maker used three different red fabrics for her strips. Well, that's why it looks weird then.
Yeah.
Which were pieced in multiple places. There is a solid turkey red and a turkey red print. The third fabric, which is now tan, was likely a red fabric dyed with a new synthetic dye. The synthetic reds of this period were not fast and soon turned to a tan or a dun color. Dyes that turn to brown or tan, whether natural or synthetic, are called fugitive dyes. I love these like little
So,
like tips of info.
yeah. Well,
Kind
and
of
that makes
thing.
sense to me now, right?
Mhm.
So those ones where you're like, why would they put the red here and the tan here? It's
Yeah.
because those were fugitive and they probably looked much closer to each other.
Yep.
Yeah.
Agreed. And then we have this
Ooh.
very simple, pretty
But that looks like a tiny little stripe, a little itty bitty like pinstripe
a pin
fabric.
instead of
The fa
a like a
the
check.
fabric.
Oh,
Is it a check? Because it looks like a little pinstripe to me. Is it a
hold on.
check? Oh, it is a little tiny
Yeah.
check. I was really seeing it as a pinstripe.
I mean, it just goes to show you it's in the eye of the beholder.
And you have to get your eyeballs up close to quilts.
I can only imagine if you were in the museum looking at these things, there'd literally be a Stephanie face print on all the
Yes,
plexiglass.
there would be nose prints on all of the plexi because I'd be like, oh, let me
Yeah,
see.
just like a cat. I'm actually, I'm surprised. I think in the past for some other exhibits I've seen where sometimes I hope I'm not misremembering this, but I feel like sometimes I've seen them leave a magnifying glass on top of the cabinet so that you can see some things a little
Oh
closer.
yeah, that's nice. Yeah.
Mhm. So we've got a flying geese crib quilt, circa 1900, 33 and three quarters by 41 and a quarter, hand pieced, hand quilted. The maker of this quilt took much care in its construction. Three rows with 20 geese, each symbolized by the triangles following each other by pointing in one direction, alternate with bars of red and white checked and plain white fabric. A dynamic composition results from the placement of the center row of geese flying in an upward direction in opposition to the two downward rows on each side of it. It is very delightful.
Ooh, this.
And now we get into the bed area, and anyone that has watched any other exhibits from this particular gallery, this post here, this is a real antique bed that was
Mhm.
donated to the museum, and it stays in this gallery and they use it to display other quilts, but they'll often hang quilts behind it. And what's interesting is it does become a little annoying when you're trying to get a photo of the whole quilt,
Yeah.
obviously. But it's almost makes it seem like that bed is in place in a room,
Hmm.
when they hang quilts around it. And because let's see, who were we reading? Was it the quilters maybe? Or was it I forget who it was who was talking about hanging quilts on the walls because the snow would come through.
Yeah, I think that was the quilters.
Or it
Yeah,
was Tallulah Bottoms there. I wonder if it
maybe.
could
Yeah,
have been
that
her
too.
too.
And my great grandmother
Okay.
also. Yeah,
Yeah.
it definitely like I mean, there's that era of westward expansion. So you've got the pioneer situation, and they're basically going to a place where there's nothing, and they're digging holes in the ground to live in temporarily, and then building like log cabin type structures. Then you have people in the mountains who just were poor and did things like that too. So yeah, quilts could, as wall coverings, they're quite decorative, but they also are kind of an insulation
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and hanging them
always
over doors, like over doors too,
hmm
for drafts.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's one reason I never really feel bad about my fabric stash because I'm like, if we're ever in a scenario where we need to like insulate a room or something. Yeah.
Plenty of fabric to do it. Yep.
Yeah. Also, I can't so remember when we were reading the book about Native American quilts and there were a lot of star quilts in there.
Hmm. Yeah.
I don't ever recall seeing kind of that star block used in this way in that book.
Mm-mm. No, I mean I've seen a number of quilts that kind of use, gosh, it was one we were looking at the other day, and now I I can't even begin to remember where we saw it. That's the problem with looking at quilts every day. You lose track of what you've seen. It definitely used like quadrants of the Lone Star or Star of Bethlehem,
Hmm.
whatever you want to call it. But I have never seen something like this.
Hmm.
Yeah, and I'm sitting here wondering like how is this constructed? Like where does it fit together?
When you can also tell, because I mean, I'm standing a significant amount of space back, but you can tell just from where I'm standing how like perfectly this is quilted. You
Hmm.
got this quilting on the bottom, we get tighter up in here. Like, and that's one thing that I love. Like, look at the quilting. Like, good Lord. It's just some simple, like crosshatch quilting, but it
And then
is
you can
so,
see where it somebody went kind of in a different direction.
yeah, right here. I mean, I don't actually, that also kind of is telling me where the is this, it almost looks like this is constructed in rows. See the
Yeah,
line?
maybe.
The line
Uh-huh.
right there?
I can see that. Yeah.
But yeah, I'm guessing this is probably maybe another hand than this one right here.
Hmm.
Um, and then when we get over
Um,
into the side here, it's like it looks like it's like a different, it's straight up and down, and I think it's double.
yeah, it's not quite as it's not spaced the same way that the
Yes,
body
and
of the quilt
it's a
is.
double. There's a double line. Like
Gotcha.
just in the out, like same in the outside here. Isn't that bananas? I can't even imagine like planning all that. So we've got Streak of Lightning circa 1850, cotton hand piece, hand quilted. The Streak of Lightning pattern is usually composed of large triangles made from single pieces of fabric. This maker has used a piecing technique using 45-degree diamond pieces to form the triangles, taking an already difficult pattern to a higher level of complexity. The maker of this quilt was a highly accomplished needleworker, as evidenced by her precise piecing and intricate close hand quilting.
Hmm.
Look at that.
Yeah, and you're right. You can see like
Yeah, where the
it's
seam is right
where the
here.
direction, yeah, where they change direction, that center of
Hmm.
that is
Yeah.
where and you can see now they're big the big diamonds that would go together to make a Lone Star.
Yeah, so here's another seam here. Yeah, the amount of planning.
Yes, because if you have never tried to make a Lone Star, what you should notice in here is the way that the diamonds go together, whether you're sewing them like this or you're sewing them like this, it matters. They are not interchangeable. And if you sew
Hmm.
them in the wrong, the wrong
Orientation.
orientation,
Hmm.
then you have to take it apart or you're going to have to use it for another part because it doesn't work.
What's interesting too is she's also quilted inside these triangles, but it's just like a straight, like in the ditch,
Hmm.
kind of like just a simple
Yeah,
outline.
it's that quarter inch in. I can't
Yeah,
remember what that's
like
called. It's just like a,
which
yeah.
would which with all this crosshatch would actually like it gives it even more movement, you know?
Hmm.
I also really like this red print. And of
I
course,
also have to say, like, I can see where some of the quilting, like the width is not perfect. Some of those squares are not quite squares, but it's still like very consistent looking and very nice tiny stitches. So,
hmm, can we
yeah,
also just like have a moment for this like conversation print thing here?
I'm having a hard time kind of seeing what it is, but
Like it even has its own little like streak of lightning in it. Look at that.
oh, okay. So it's kind of like they're just odd little patterns. They almost look like they remind me of like amoeba or something,
Yeah, they're
Like
just like here's a
looking
little
through the,
inchworm.
yeah.
Here's the sign for Taurus.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. They look almost like, yeah, they almost look like, I don't know, symbols of some sort.
Yeah,
Interesting.
it's
Very
funny, she
interesting.
even paid close attention to the direction of her fabric when she was trading like between, because see, like this one, they all go this way, and then like this
Hmm.
one, they're all going this way.
Yep.
Um, yeah, that was a woman paying attention. And then it was hard to get because of where this quilt is placed. I can't reach. It's being blocked by things. So I was trying to get a picture up here, ooh, of the border.
Yeah, that border print, well, and it's used within the body of the
Hmm.
diamonds too. That's a very interesting like mold print.
Hmm. And then she's a different red here. Um, but man, she clearly had quite a bit of this brown.
Hmm. For
Makes me
sure,
wonder
yeah.
if, yeah, makes me wonder if I should be
I
jealous and like she bought like a whole boat.
Well, I mean, that's the thing, you know. I mean, I think it was some of our mentors have said, you know, and there was a color, you know, particularly if we're talking like, you know, pioneer type people that were not necessarily close to major shipping centers or major cities, whatever. If they saw something they liked, the possibility of it not being there and not being able to match it again, they would buy what they could.
Hmm. Oh, and then I made sure to get a close-up of this other quilting.
Got it. All right. What else? Did we get to look at that quilt that was on the bed?
Of course. And then of course I had like some of them I took some video of. You know, for things like shorts. Is that what you
Oh,
wanted?
oh, look at this beauty.
What's really cool is this like this like edge treatment here. I get, don't worry, like I get a close-up of it. So we've got tumbling blocks circa 1880 because it has to be.
Hmm.
Cotton hand pieced, embroidered, and quilted. This quilt, tumbling blocks, is constructed of diamonds set as an all over mosaic with herringbone stitch embroidery in variegated colors over joining seams. The reverse of this quilt is decorated with large tufts of embroidery floss in an array of different colors. Bummer. I wish they'd like peeled back a part of it then. This
Oh
quilt was
yeah.
owned by Esther Annistel Burr of St. Louis, Missouri, the grandmother of Lindy Johnson, who found the quilt in the attic when she settled her grandmother's estate.
I mean, these are the stories you love to hear. You're like, what? This beautiful
Mm-hmm.
quilt, nobody's probably looked at it in 100 years and it's in perfect condition. And for some reason, the attic was never too hot or too cold. And there were no squirrels or
I
mice up
know, right?
there.
Yeah, I feel like I put something in like my attic or my basement and it's destroyed immediately.
Exactly. Yeah. Um, so this is the crazy quilt era, right? So you see
Hmm.
the techniques and the fabrics are definitely from that, you know, crazy quilt era. I feel like these kind of quilts are like the people who are like, I cannot do crazy quilting.
This is the
Like it's
closest
there's
I can
got to be
get.
some there needs to be some order in my life. And so they used the popular fabrics to make something like this. And
Mm.
I think that's exciting too. That's a really, you know, really
Oh,
cool to look at the different you know, expressions of.
hold on. I wanted to like I love this little treatment right here.
Yeah, and now is that look to me it looks like it's like upholstery, like
Yeah,
the
it's like a
passement type of
cording.
upholstery. Yeah.
Hmm.
I know we've seen a lot of that on quilts of this era,
Hmm.
whether they're crazy quilts or something like this.
Hmm. And then this one is the other one that was behind the bed, which was another one that I was like, okay, Laura, like let's just take out like all of the most pristine things. Like I almost kind of feel like this one's also so incredibly pristine. We've also just got a very simple kind of like crosshatch quilting going on. It makes me think like were these gals on the wall behind the bed sisters? You know, like it just makes me so happy.
Yeah, there is something very joyous about an old quilt that is in good condition that was taken care of, you know. I mean, as much as we love to see the ones that were loved, you know, and all that, I also think it's you know, fantastic to see something that was made with such care and taken care of so well.
So this one is perhaps Kentucky. Four-star patchwork variation circa 1840, cotton, hand-pieced and quilted. The initials SEM are embroidered on this quilt, thought to be from Kentucky or West Virginia. The combination of the eight-pointed star blocks with wide sashing and orange peel cornerstone blocks works as an unusual and interesting overall design element. I think I can't remember, but I think I may have gotten a picture of the initials, but I'm also thinking they were in a spot I couldn't get a picture of. But yeah, well, I don't know that I've seen this green print before. but it's a nice one. This is also like someone that looks very skilled in their quilting, like how close those
Mhm.
are.
Very pretty.
And that is just
Yeah, and then
a
those
little
orange
block.
peels.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's so interesting.
No, I didn't get it close enough.
Oh. Oh,
I know,
we
isn't
love a
this
hexie.
terrible? All the planning that went in this, I don't often see a lot of hexies with this much color planning,
Hmm.
but this one had quite a bit of color planning, especially with all of that like
Yeah, I mean, this is
orange.
kind of like, gosh, who was the woman who did all of those mosaic type quilts? Ah, she, I mean, she had stuff like this, but it was like this on steroids. I feel like this is the intermediate version of that.
Yeah, I think this one's also too just a top. And like to have like I can only imagine how many hexies of this in between because it's consistent.
Hmm.
Like
Hmm.
like there's probably like 3,000 of just that one
Hmm.
color.
And this is not a scrap quilt.
No.
That is enough yardage. There was enough yardage involved if you've never made a English paper piece, hexie, that kind of thing. Um, it's surprising how much,
Well, and
fabric you use up.
just look at all these ones where it actually looks like
Yeah.
fussy cut.
That's what I was going to say. It looks like she's really specifically chosen because you can see like that. It's like there's the outer is the like the half border, and then you've
Hmm.
got those two. That second one up, it's two looks like a gray print or a black print, and
Hmm.
then the white, and then one, and then the white, and then
Hmm.
two, and then the yeah. It looks like she's got like this specific
Oh yeah, she
pat
planned the crap out of
pattern.
this.
Yes, yes.
So we've got hexagon mosaic quilt top circa 1880 cotton hand piece. The donor purchased this quilt top at an estate sale about 40 years ago. Although she's an experienced quilter, she never felt skilled enough to hand or machine quilt this beautifully composed top. The maker of this top is unknown to us and is the reason it was never finished. Yeah, it's at first I thought it was a
Oh,
boat belt, but yeah, look
and is
like
that a
that.
shirting? That's the board like
Oh,
the border.
I thought you were potentially going to be like, is that a centennial green?
Well, that too.
Um, but yes, it's a shirting.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah, this piece is like really good. But I was going to ask you about these greens,
Beautiful.
if they were centennial greens or if they weren't bright enough.
Um, so I don't know about those two. I think that one in the top, that's too bright. That one up there, that's the half,
Hmm.
that seems a little bit closer. And again, like I again, tip of the iceberg in my learning about this, and I'm often looking at greens going, is that centennial green? And most of the time it's
Yeah,
not.
I
But I
oftentimes when
feel,
I think it's not, it is, and when I think
yeah,
it is,
to me, the centennial green is like a
it's like a
little bit
bright
greener.
teal.
Well, yeah, it's a little bit, it's like a minty color. It's a little bit greener than, say, Crest or toothpaste. Like that's what I think of, like the Crest and Colgate, not the gel ones, but the ones that are just lightly tinted. That's
Mhm.
like what the color is to me.
Oh.
So
Well,
yeah,
I'm sure one of our friends when they're watching this, but
yeah.
yeah, that's why I made
Right.
sure to
Yeah,
get that
out
photo.
of those three different green fabrics, the one at the top is the one I personally think if any of them are Centennial would be that one, but I don't know. They might none of them be Centennial green. I don't know.
And then this one's hard to get because it's on one of those big slanted boards, and
Yeah.
you can't walk all the way around it. You can only get on like two sides of it. But yeah, that one was super lovely. Oh, I did
Oh,
get
I
it.
love that orangey, that that's that chromium orange, I guess, or chrome orange. Oh, and look at the
Yes.
fussy cutting, the way she did the fussy cutting so that
Hmm.
it's
This red with these little diamonds is really cute too. But yeah, the way she fussy cut this, it almost looks like a kaleidoscope.
hmm. I feel like today, I mean, I know you've been working on some English paper piecing, and I mean, I've done a few smaller pieces. I feel like a lot of times people are either doing like a flower like this, or they're doing something very scrappy. And there is really something to be said for this type of like very carefully planned execution. I mean, it's obviously it's hard. You have
Hmm.
to, it could still be a sitting in front of the TV or traveling, lap hand quilting or hand work. But it's still, you really do have to plan this out, through a sketch or something.
And then, of course, we got to
Oh,
get into
I
some
love a
double
double
wedding
wedding
ring.
ring. Speaking of scrappy, I love this.
All right, we'll skip this one.
This one is it a how big is it? What is this? It's a crib quilt. Okay, yeah. It's funny, a double wedding ring as a crib quilt.
Yeah, I know. We've got machine piece, hand-tied circa 1930. The double wedding ring was a popular pattern during the 20th century. It was first published in the 1920s and is a modern variation of a 19th century pattern called pickle dish, which I love even more
Oh,
than
I love pickle dish too
yeah.
because it's a little bit more complex.
hmm it is unusual to see a double wedding ring pattern used as a crib size quilt. The quilt contains a variety of juvenile prints. Possibly the fabrics were taken from sample books. This is suggested by the small size and the appearance of the same print in a number of colors.
Ah, okay.
Oh, and this was down in front of that quilt that showed these
Oh, so
really
some pieces. Okay. Okay, so you can see how somebody would
would
construct one of
make something
these.
bigger. Yeah, but let me go back to this one. I thought I got a close up, but this one's hanging in front of that thing.
Hmm. Yeah, this is just so sweet, And are
Mhm.
these like are some of those I feel like I'm seeing like there in the middle. Is that like a little I can't tell what that is. Is it somebody wearing a hat, a bonnet, a
Where?
mushroom? Up a little bit. Like
Like up
very
here?
center up. Yeah, that. What is that?
It
Is that
looks
some
like
kind
a
of
girl playing jump rope.
Okay. So it is these are children's prints or conversation prints.
Yeah,
Oh
it's a girl
yeah.
playing jump rope.
Oh yeah, I can see lots of stuff now. So these are definitely like juvenile prints from the
Mhm.
40s,
This
30s or 40s.
has this has penguins, an elephant. This
Mm.
is a guy, like a farmer with a pitchfork.
Oh my gosh, so precious. So
Here.
this said 1930s, right?
hmm
Okay. So yeah, these are I guess those juvenile prints that started. I mean, were some of those coming out in the 20s or is there a shift from the 20s to the
I think
30s
there's
of
a
this?
very clear shift from the 20s to the 30s.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because you start seeing this like pastel
Hmm.
like kind of stuff. Um, yeah, no, it's very cute.
Gorgeous. I
Very,
love this one.
very cute. Okay.
Makes me very happy. That very sweet.
Yeah, so oh okay, so I grabbed this after the thing. So this is an unfinished double wedding ring. Was that video? I'll show it again. In this case are pieces of an unfinished top circa 1940.
Okay.
Some of
Yep.
the pieces date to around 1900 and probably came from the maker's scrap bag. There is also a waxed envelope of die-cut patches sold by Wallenstein Quilt Patches Inc.,
Oh.
incorporated in 1932 in Atkinson, Kansas. The company is no longer a business. They sold pre-cut patchwork pieces in several patterns, including Friendship Ring, also known as Dresden plate, and wedding ring. The maker of this unfinished project is unknown, so I'll show that video again.
And so yeah, from what I understand, those pre-cut patches could be mail ordered and sometimes they sold
Mm-hmm.
them in places like Sears, like
Mm-hmm.
department stores. You could go pick up those things. I mean, it's definitely like kind of lowering the barrier to making a quilt,
Mm-hmm.
to have access to something
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
already,
so it's
yeah.
funny because those people that think that pre-cuts, like charm packs and
Yes.
stuff like that for makers is like a new thing.
It is not.
No. And then this is our last cutie, I think. Hanging on.
Oh. So this is
Well, this one looks more like the pickle dish block, but I don't know if this setting is called something else. Let's look to
yeah,
see.
what is this?
Mohawk
Mohawk
Trail.
Trail. Okay. Yeah. So this
So,
is, yeah, more like a drunkard's path the way that it's.
circa 1940, hand-pieced and quilted Mohawk Trail blocks, like the more familiar Drunkard's Path, can be arranged in many different ways to create a secondary pattern. This mid-20th century quilt was hand-pieced by a 21st century quilter would be more likely, hold on, sorry. This mid-century quilt was hand pieced, but a 20th century quilt maker would be more likely to machine piece this pattern on pre-printed paper foundation. This pattern is also known as Chinese fan. Interesting, because like I thought that because like the having the triangles in the square, like in the
The curve.
yeah, that automatically reminds me of pickle dish, but
Hmm.
that also goes to show you that there's
Yeah,
so many patterns out there that are very similar. Just look through Brackman's
yeah,
Encyclopedia of Piece Patterns.
exactly. Hmm.
Um, that lots of things look very similar. But yeah.
Yeah. And I think Mariner's Compass is another one that has, and of course, Mariner's Compass, they're very long, skinny. But I think in modern quilters or contemporary, today's quilters can use like the foundation papers that are like curved, and then you're
Hmm.
just doing
Hmm.
those little triangles. And then I've seen some of the same sort of techniques done with Mariner's Compass, like on oh, there's one teacher that my mom has taken classes from, and I've taken classes from her. She, for her Mariner's Compass class, she uses coffee filters from like industrial coffee urns, like they use in food service.
Hmm.
And I think you can buy them like at Costco or something. And, but they're big and you flatten them out. And then she shows how to draft and draw on them, sort of.
Hmm.
It still takes some effort, but, and how you would then be able to, paper foundation piece, like
That's interesting.
those things. Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
We have so many things to us that are shortcuts today, even if they do take a little bit of expertise. And then you think
Hmm.
about the fact that, I mean, this is 1940s,
Hmm.
presumably, they, even then they didn't really have, necessarily all of the things today that we have to make life easier.
True. I love this like quilting motif on the inside here that we're doing more than just
Yeah. It's
the
like a flower
crosshatch.
and its
Hmm.
leaves. Yeah.
Yeah, and I wonder too if like this particular point in time, if we're dealing like, are we freehanding? Are we stenciling?
Hmm.
I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. And it's so cute. Like she's just a quilter after my own heart. Because like say goodbye to her tips. Like
Yeah. Well, and I mean, so tiny too. I mean, those, I'm assuming, I mean, even this is a bed-sized quilt, those are still pretty small triangles.
hmm.
And so with those motifs, and I do like the motif has been designed to fit in that space, like that shape.
Hmm.
But I think we're getting into the period in the 20th century where we're getting away from those really densely quilted things of the 19th century, and you're seeing, well, obviously in like the Depression era, you saw lots of tied quilts. I think it was a matter of like make do and you know,
Get her
quick
done.
quilt. Yeah, quick quilt to hang to cover the drafts or to warm your family.
Hmm.
Those like comfort. I mean, there's a lot of areas that call those a comfort. Like I think Pennsylvania uses that term. So if it's tied, it's like a comfort. But anyway, you see less quilting. It's like it's not as dense. It's more like sort of motify like this. Motify.
Well, it's funny. I almost like want to call it like it's more like artistic quilting, where it
Hmm.
becomes its own design,
Hmm.
that could or could not have anything to do with the
Right.
rest of the
The
piecing
fabrics
or
and
applique
yeah.
or
Hmm.
um anything like that.
Well, I mean, I think that, quilts of antiquity also have motifs. I
Hmm.
just feel like these are more like, I mean, I'm not trying to disparage the quilter, but like these are more simplistic.
Hmm.
Like this is just an outline of a flower and its leaves. It's not this dense cluster of flowers that are then surrounded by a feathered wreath, then with, the cross hatching behind them. Like, there's layers of complexity in the older quilts. Whereas I think once you get into the 20th century, particularly with this, the colonial revival of like the 1920s, the teens and the 20s, I think you get a lot of quilt makers that are prolifically making quilts, but they've scaled down what the quilting looks like.
Hmm. And this is actually our last photo.
Well, awesome. That was an awesome show. I love that. And
Yeah,
that exhibit has come down, right? Or
yeah,
is
and
it at its own?
there's a new one up in there.
Ah,
I I think it's called like Showstoppers. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet because when I was at the museum last Wednesday, that was my first Wednesday being able to see it because I'd been away.
Right.
Um, and the museum was bananas. Yeah, are you gonna tell us about yours?
Yeah, you said I could wait until we started recording, and then I forgot. So I put this one up. I recently had this one out at a quilt study, and there is like a sister quilt to it. It's the same design, and some of the fabrics are repeated. And I can show you the back side of this fabric. The
Oh.
backing
Mm-hmm.
appears on the front of the other quilt in some of these.
Oh.
So I do know, even though this quilt is not labeled, and bad Stephanie, I need to get around to doing that. This quilt was made by my great grandmother.
Oh.
So my father's father's mother. Now I also have a quilt by my father's mother's mother. But this is Lucille Grimes Caps made this quilt. I think she probably made it in the late 50s, early 60s. At that time, and it could be earlier, but I think 50s, 60s is probably safe. She was making quilts. My great grandfather had passed away, and she was making quilts while she was kind of bouncing in between some of her children. And she ended up living with my grandparents for quite some time when my dad was young. She wasn't the nicest lady, from what I understand. She was very like to squash dreams,
Okay.
you know, and was very like a very hard like disciplinarian. But she made lovely quilts.
And
And yeah,
that's
this is
all
sort
you
of
have to remember about her at this point.
she made these are it's a Jacob's ladder kind of look. The blocks are this is the block.
Hmm.
Um really large. So it would have kind of have these two overlapping like nine patchy kind of look, and then you've got triangles. Um she made this pattern a lot. And there's a couple of other patterns. Other people in my family have quilts. But these are my favorite. And I will tell you that, I mean, as potentially this quote could be as old as the 40s.
Hmm.
And I loved Pam mentioned a terminology the other day that I absolutely love, which is opportunity hole. That's where there's a place where the quilt is raggedy and you don't
Yep.
have to like cause any harm to it to just
Yep.
look inside. Well, the batting this quilt has been washed so many times. I mean, I have slept under this quilt as a child. I have been to the beach. I'm positive it's me. It's either this quilt or the other quilt. There's a picture of me on the beach sitting on this quilt while I bury my grandfather in sand.
Oh,
So
that's cute.
these quilts, I mean, my grandmother, of course, would bring them home, shake them out, wash them. But yeah, they have been clogged up with Outer Banks sand, etc. But I think that this is homemade batting. I could be wrong, but it's very lumpy.
Hmm.
It's super dense in some areas. There's big gobs of it. Um, now, you know, there certainly were, um, commercial batting available.
Hmm.
But just the fact that they were kind of poor and cheap, I suspect that this may have been some type of like homemade bats.
Hmm.
Um, it's yeah, it's inconsistent in its thickness. It's super like clumpy in areas.
Hmm.
So it makes sense. They were farmers. Her husband was a tobacco farmer. They grew lots of cotton around that area. Although I don't think their farm grew any cotton. They were primarily tobacco. So anyway, all your southern cash crops. But yeah, so she was a prolific quilter.
Is it just quilted like in an outline quilt around the squares, it looks like?
Yeah, it's like there's that inner, it's like the inner.
Hmm.
It's not stitch in the ditch, it's the just
Sure.
those inner.
Yep.
Yeah, I don't know
Hmm.
what you call that. I can't remember
Like
what
an
it's
out,
called.
it's just like an outline quilt.
Yeah, and honestly, there's a lot of the quilting has the threads have popped.
Hmm.
So it's yeah. But I love it because I just feel like, some of this stuff and there's pieced areas here that are likely um maybe scrap bag piecing, but I think like this would have been a garment. Like the
Okay.
stripe was a
Hmm.
garment because you could see like all these seams in it, and it
Hmm.
just looks like she flattened a piece of clothing out and cut squares out of it. So,
Hmm.
um, yeah. So,
Cool. That's
yeah.
lovely.
Yeah. It's nothing, it's not museum worthy, but it's
You know more of the story than museums know about
yeah,
a
I
lot
mean
of their
my
stuff.
my family quilts, I think if you're lucky enough to have family quilts, you should treasure them. Get as much information as you possibly can from the people that, might know. I mean, granted, I know we've seen lots of quilts that come down through families and the stories get even more, crazy as they go through the generations. Um, and I think like if it's a thoroughly unbelievable story, you should still document it and
Hmm.
to say this was the story.
Hmm.
Um, but I just, these kind of things that you can like they're your family history. And I
Yeah.
always I use this hashtag when I post things like quilts or documents.
Hmm.
This is a document. This documents my great grandmother's handwork during a
Hmm.
particular period in her life.
Hmm.
And if I knew the actual date, and I could probably ask my dad, he might have a better idea, but if I could really pin down the date, then I would know, well, she was living in Greensboro, North Carolina at that time with my grandparents, and she had, these health problems. And so that's why she was kind of just prolifically making these quilts because that was all she had to do.
Hmm.
So I could pin it down more closely to things like that if I had the, dates. But even without that, it's so important to document these things, put labels on them. Don't let them get out of your hands. If you have information, don't let them get out of your hands without documenting that.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, that was a great PSA to end on.
I think so. Yeah. I mean, whether you're a collector or a maker or both, it's such a simple thing to document a quilt.
True story.
It really is.
So the next time that people see us, we will be discussing our next round in Pam Weeks's portable patchwork.
Yeah.
And we'll
I'm
be back.
so looking forward to reading that book because
I
it's such a
am.
good book.
And we'll be back to a little more normal schedule by then.
Well,
All right, everybody. Thanks so much for watching with us. We love you so much and we appreciate you. Please make sure that you're subscribing and following us on our socials. We do things like giveaways and, we like to hang out with you if we're in town. So, like,
yeah,
keep in
yeah.
touch.
Click the follows and the subscribes and the all that,
And
and the
turn on your
share.
notifications and all
Yes.
that jazz.
Yep. And let your friends know. Bring your friends. Bring your enemies. We'll take anybody.
We'll make them nicer people.
All they have to do is like quilts. They can be anything else. But as long as they like quilts, well, they're welcome.
Thanks so much for joining us, guys. Have a good one.